I raised the spoon to my lips, but something felt wrong. The dog refused to eat it. That's when I realized my sister had tried to poison me. Hey there. Welcome to today's story. Wherever you are, doing dishes, out for a walk, maybe just winding down, I invite you to pause for a moment and come with me. Today's story takes us deep into the woods, where a woman thought she was reconnecting with her sister, only to discover a terrifying truth. Have you ever trusted someone, only to realize they weren't who you thought they were? Stick around to the end to find out how she faced betrayal, danger, and what it really means to protect your own life. And hey, if this kind of story speaks to you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This is what keeps me going, and it means the world. Now let's begin.
If someone told me a year ago that my own sister would one day try to kill me, I would have laughed. Lana was the charming one, the golden girl. She lit up every room she walked into. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Hi, my name is Evelyn Ross, and I'm a writer. Not the flashy kind. I don't do book tours or live interviews. I write quietly, from a little cedar cabin tucked beside Mirror Lake, surrounded by nothing but pines, silence, and time. It's where I've lived for the past 5 years. I came here to take care of my father during his final illness, and after he passed, I just never left. I guess the loneliness grew on me. 3 months ago, after the funeral, my younger sister Lana came to visit. "Just to check in on you," she said. "Make sure you're not drowning in grief out here alone." I hadn't seen her more than twice a year before that. Too busy, always something. But when she hugged me on the porch with teary eyes and a trembling smile, I believed she meant it. That first week together almost felt like we were teenagers again. We drank red wine by the fireplace, flipped through old photo albums, laughed about the time she convinced me to cut my own bangs with kitchen scissors. It was the kind of warmth I hadn't felt in years. But there were little things, barely noticeable at first, that started to itch at the back of my mind. Like how she flinched when I asked about the will, or how she'd disappear on long walks, always returning with her phone warm in her palm, her screen wiped clean. I chalked it up to stress. We had just buried our father. Emotions were raw. Boundaries were weird. I figured we'd both settle in. But one night, I stayed up late working on a new chapter of my memoir, the one about Dad's last summer, when he could barely speak but still insisted I read to him every evening. Lana knocked gently on my door and brought in a tray of tea and cookies. "Chocolate," she smiled. "You used to love it." She sat on the edge of my desk while I sipped. I remember thinking how much older she looked, how tired. But then she asked, "Have you thought about going back to the city, starting fresh?" I shook my head. "This place feels like home now." She didn't press the topic, just gave me a long look before heading back to bed. The next morning, I woke up feeling groggy, like I'd been drugged. I wrote it off as fatigue, until I realized my dog, Clover, hadn't touched his food. By afternoon, he was vomiting violently. We rushed to the local vet. "Possible poisoning," they said. I was stunned. Lana said it must have been something he picked up outside. "There are mushrooms all over these woods," she shrugged. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But something in her voice didn't match her words. That night, when she fell asleep, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her suitcase. I'm not proud of it, but curiosity had twisted into something darker, doubt. And doubt, when it festers, demands answers. What I found wasn't much, just some neatly folded clothes, receipts from a bank in Portland, and a small velvet folder with the initials RR, my father's name, Raymond Ross. Inside was a printed email chain. I only read one line before my hands started shaking. In the event of Evelyn's passing, the entire estate should default to the secondary heir. I couldn't breathe. Was this real? I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I turned. No one there. Just the wind against the trees. I put everything back exactly as I found it. Laid in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. Couldn't sleep. couldn't move. And that was the moment something inside me shifted from grief to fear. Because suddenly, I wasn't sure if Lana came to visit me or to erase me. I didn't say anything to Lana the next morning. I couldn't. I didn't trust myself to keep a straight face, and I didn't want her to know I'd seen the folder. Instead, I brewed coffee, set the mugs down with a smile, and asked if she wanted to go kayaking like we'd planned. She laughed, "You? On a kayak before noon?" and teased me like always. I laughed too, but there was a strange, invisible wall between us now. I started watching her. Not obviously, just small things. Where her eyes went when she thought I wasn't looking. How she'd open her laptop, type fast for a few minutes, then immediately shut the screen the moment I walked by. She'd take calls outside and return with that pleasant, blank expression people wear when they're hiding something. I told myself I was being paranoid, that grief was warping my perspective. But when you feel the ground under your feet start to crack, you don't wait around to see if you imagined it. You listen. You prepare. So, I made changes. I moved some documents, installed a discreet voice-activated recorder in the living room, password-locked my computer, even though Lana had never shown the slightest interest in it before. I wasn't entirely sure what I was protecting. Maybe just the idea of safety itself. Then something happened that shoved everything off the edge of suspicion into the realm of certainty. It was a Tuesday evening. Lana had driven into town to run errands, which supposedly included groceries and a haircut, even though she returned with neither. I used the time to open the spare key drawer in Dad's old writing desk, one I hadn't touched in years. Inside, tucked beneath a pile of faded receipts, was a slim, sealed envelope with my name in his handwriting. For Evelyn, if anything ever happens. My hands shook as I opened it. It was a letter, handwritten, 5 pages long. In it, Dad laid out his decision to leave the bulk of his estate, 90% to be exact, to me. He mentioned the years I'd spent caring for him, driving him to appointments, reading to him on the porch. He acknowledged how absent Lana had been, though he didn't blame her. She always had other dreams, he wrote. But you were here, every day, and I want you to be safe, Evie. Safe. That word didn't make sense until the last paragraph. He mentioned a conversation he'd had with Lana shortly before his last stroke. She had asked him, directly, what would happen to the estate if I died before the will was finalized. He didn't say what he answered, only that the question chilled him to his core. I sat there for a long time after reading that, watching shadows stretch across the floor like long fingers. My mouth was dry. My heartbeat sounded like footsteps in my ears. Then I heard the front door creak open. I stuffed the letter back into its envelope, slipped it into my boot, and shoved the boot under my bed. Lana's voice called out from the kitchen. "I picked up some Thai. You in the mood for curry?" I told her I was. Ate every bite without tasting a thing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I watched her through the crack of my bedroom door, saw her pour herself a glass of wine, and sit by the fire scrolling through her phone. She looked peaceful, normal, but the image didn't comfort me. It unnerved me, like watching a skilled actress rehearse for a role she knew better than her own face. The next morning, I called Mason Grant. Mason used to be our neighbor when we were kids. He moved back to town last year after retiring early from law enforcement. These days, he ran a security consulting business out of a barn-turned office across the lake. I told him I wanted some help installing outdoor cameras, just for peace of mind. He came by later that afternoon. Lana was out for a walk again, which felt almost too convenient. Mason didn't ask many questions, just gave me a long, serious look as he unpacked the gear. I told him half the truth. "Things have been weird," I said. "She's not herself. I just need to know what's going on." He nodded. People change when money's involved, especially when grief muddies the water. By sundown, the house had eyes. One camera on the back porch, one above the entryway, and one in the trees near the woodshed where Lana liked to take calls. That night, Lana asked me if I was feeling okay. She said I looked pale. "I'm just tired," I replied. She tilted her head and smiled. "You should get more sleep, Evie. Can't let this place eat you alive." Her words echoed in my head long after she went to bed. The following day, I reviewed the recordings. Most were uneventful: birds, wind, squirrels. But the footage near the woodshed caught something. Lana, talking on the phone. She was pacing, agitated. Her voice was low, but Mason's gear was good. I can't keep dragging this out. She's starting to suspect something. No, I haven't asked her to sign yet. It has to look like she volunteered. I know, but she's not stupid. Then silence. She turned her back to the camera, took a deep breath, and said, "It'll be easier if she just doesn't wake up." I slammed the laptop shut. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I wanted to scream, call the police, pack my bags and run. But I didn't. Not yet. Because suddenly I realized something terrifying. She's not just waiting for me to die. She's planning to help it happen. And if I moved too soon, I might not get another chance. So I stayed, pretended, plotted, because this time the story wasn't going to end the way she wrote it, not if I could help it. After watching that footage, something inside me snapped, but not in the way I expected. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't confront her. I became cold, focused. Every gesture, every word from Lana now felt rehearsed, manipulated, weaponized. She moved through the cabin like she owned it, setting the table, offering wine, humming old songs like we were just two sisters on a peaceful retreat. But I knew now. I knew she had no intention of leaving this place without my signature, or my silence. 2 nights later, a storm rolled in off the lake, the kind that cracks the sky in half and makes the power flicker like bad omens. I was in the middle of writing, my desk lamp dim, thunder thudding in the distance, when Lana knocked softly on my door. She held a tray, soup, bread, a small glass of red wine. "Stormy nights call for comfort food," she said with a soft smile. Everything about her felt choreographed. I looked at the soup, steam curling off the top. It smelled like butternut squash with rosemary. Warm, cozy, familiar. She set it down beside my notebook and leaned on the doorway. "I know things have been tense lately," she said, "but I want us to move forward, to figure things out, like family." Family? The word caught in my throat. "Thanks," I murmured. "Eat while it's hot," she said, her voice just a little too sweet. Then she turned and walked back down the hall, humming under her breath. I waited a full minute after her footsteps faded. Then I took the bowl of soup and poured it, carefully, into the metal mixing bowl I used for Clover's food. I placed it on the floor. He sniffed it, licked it once, and walked away. That was all I needed to know. I dumped the rest into the trash, flushed the wine down the sink, and spent the next hour wide awake, sitting by the fireplace with the poker in my lap like a weapon. She didn't try anything else that night, but I barely blinked. The next morning, Lana was chipper again. Too chipper. She made pancakes, talked about maybe staying longer. "There's no reason to rush back," she said. "It's peaceful here." Peaceful? Like a grave. I told her I needed to drive into town. "Supplies," I said. "We're low on propane." She offered to go in my place, but I insisted. Something in my tone must have warned her not to push. Once I got to the gas station, I didn't head for propane. I drove straight to Mason's place. He was working in the garage, welding something under the hood of a truck. When he saw my face, he pulled the helmet off and walked straight over. "She tried to poison me," I said. His face didn't register surprise, just concern. "You still have what she gave you?" "Dumped it," I said. but I have the bowl. Might be enough for testing." Mason nodded. "Leave it with me." That night, I returned to the cabin just as the rain started again. Lana was curled up on the couch, book in hand, fire crackling in the hearth. She looked up and smiled like she'd been waiting for me. "How was town?" "Quiet," I said. Dinner was already made. Something simple, pasta and salad. She poured us both water, no wine this time. Maybe she thought I was onto her. Maybe she was testing a different approach. Halfway through the meal, she leaned in, elbows on the table. "Evie, can I ask you something?" I kept my face neutral. "Sure." "If anything ever happened to you, what would you want done with the cabin?" The fork in my hand paused mid-air. "Excuse me?" "Just if something ever happened. I mean, I'd want to make sure your wishes were honored." I stared at her. The flicker of the candle between us caught something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not coldness, not evil, calculation. "I'd want it to stay in the family," I said evenly, "but I'm not planning on going anywhere." She smiled. "Of course not. I was just wondering." The rest of dinner passed in silence. Later that night, while she slept, I snuck into the mudroom and placed the voice recorder in her coat pocket. I had no idea if she'd say anything useful, but I needed something. Anything. The next morning, she said she was heading out for a walk by the lake. Need to clear my head. I watched her leave, then waited exactly 20 minutes before calling Mason. He picked up on the second ring. "I got the test results," he said. "There were trace elements of a sedative. Not lethal, but enough to knock someone out." I felt my stomach drop. He continued, "That's not all. The cameras caught her dragging something behind the woodshed at midnight. Big tarp. Can't tell what's inside, but it's worth checking." By the time Lana returned, I was sitting on the porch with a blanket and a mug of tea I made for myself. She was flushed, smiling, her boots muddy. "Beautiful morning," she said. "Yeah," I said. "It really is." I didn't ask about the tarp. Not yet. Because in that moment, I realized something bigger than fear had taken over. I wasn't going to run. Not from my home. Not from her. She wanted to erase me. But I was going to write the ending this time. And she had no idea the story had already begun turning against her. That night, I pretended to sleep. It wasn't hard. Lana and I had barely spoken since her morning walk, and the silence had turned from awkward to charged. She didn't ask questions. Neither did I. We just existed around each other, both of us waiting for the other to make a move. But I wasn't just waiting. I was collecting. The voice recorder I slipped into her coat? Still there. I hadn't touched it since. Didn't want to risk tipping her off. But I had a hunch she was starting to feel boxed in. Maybe she sensed the shift in me, the way my fear had settled into something sharper. Sometime after midnight, I heard her door creak open. Footsteps down the hall. The front door unlocked, opened, then clicked shut. I counted to 30, then slipped out of bed. From the darkened living room, I watched through the window as she disappeared around the side of the cabin, toward the woodshed. The tarp. The one Mason had mentioned on the footage. I grabbed my boots, coat, and flashlight and waited until the tree swallowed her completely before stepping outside. I took the long way around, silent, slow. The rain had made the earth soft enough to muffle my steps. I stayed low, watching from behind the tool shed. She had the tarp pulled back. It was wrapped around something bulky, but she was struggling to move it. Digging, maybe. The flashlight on the ground gave me enough light to see her face. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicked. She was focused, methodical. I stepped on a branch. It cracked beneath me. Lana froze. "Who's there?" she snapped, whipping around. I didn't move, barely breathed. She picked up the flashlight, scanned the trees, then pulled the tarp back over whatever she'd been handling. She looked around once more, then headed back toward the cabin, quickening her pace. I waited 5 minutes before moving. I didn't dare uncover what was beneath that tarp, at least not yet. Not alone. Not without backup. By the time I got back inside, Lana was in the kitchen, casually pouring tea like nothing happened. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Figured I'd have some chamomile. Want any?" I shook my head. Already had some. She gave me a long, unreadable look. "You're up late." "So are you." A pause. Then, "You were outside." I could say the same. She didn't blink, just smiled, slowly. Funny how we always seem to end up in the same place. The next morning, I called Mason. "Whatever's under that tarp," I told him, "I'm done guessing. We need to dig." He met me that afternoon with a deputy he trusted, a guy named Harlan, quiet type, sharp eyes. I told Lana I was going into town for groceries, and she barely looked up from her laptop when I left. By 3:30, we were at the shed. Gloves on, shovels ready. We peeled the tarp back. It wasn't a body. It was a locked, waterproof storage bin. Inside, documents, files, hard drives. One was labeled RR Estate Revised. Mason opened it slowly, skimming the contents. "This looks like forgery prep," he said. "Fake notary seals, printed forms, signature templates." One folder had my name on it. Inside was a mock-up will, dated 3 weeks ago, with my signature, faked, and a clause that gave everything to Lana. "This is enough to press charges," Harlan muttered. "It won't hold forever without context, but it's strong." That's when I told them about the voice recorder. I hadn't listened to it yet. I was scared to. Mason took it with a nod. "Let me run it through some cleanup filters. I'll call you when it's ready." I got home around sunset. Lana was on the deck, bundled in her fleece, sipping red wine. Her face lit up as I pulled in, like nothing in the world had changed. "I was just about to start dinner," she said. "You read my mind." "I'm not hungry," I replied. I started to walk past her, but she stood, blocking the door. "Evie," she said softly, "we should talk." "About?" She exhaled through her nose, nervous. "You've been distant, secretive. I just want us to be okay." My chest burned. "Is that why you forged my name? In case things weren't okay?" Her eyes flickered. "What are you talking about?" I stepped forward. "Don't lie to me, Lana." For the first time, her face changed. No fake smile, no wide-eyed innocence, just pure calculation. "I did what I had to do," she said flatly. "Dad should have split things evenly. I've had to fight for everything in my life. And you just stayed, played nurse, watched him die, and now you get rewarded for that?" I stared at her. "You think what I did was easy?" She laughed. "It was convenient. You got the sympathy card." I felt cold, like someone had punched the air from my lungs. I loved him. "So did I," she snapped, "but love doesn't pay the bills." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk and wrote. Not a book, not a chapter, just thoughts, memories, every conversation, every doubt. I documented everything, just in case. At 2 a.m., Mason called. "You need to hear this," he said. He sent the cleaned-up audio file. I listened to it in the dark, heart racing. Lana's voice, unmistakably clear. "I've got the documents. Once she signs the new will, we move forward. If not, I'll find another way. A cabin that remote? Accidents happen." My body went numb. This wasn't about suspicion anymore. This was intent, proof. And now, it was my move. The following morning, I made eggs and toast like nothing was different. Lana came down the stairs in leggings and a hoodie, rubbing her eyes like a kid home from college. "You're up early," she mumbled, stretching. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "Storm kept me up." She poured herself coffee. No makeup, no walls. I watched her stir an almond milk like it was any ordinary day, like she hadn't plotted to erase me for a few zeros in a bank account. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. I stared at her face, trying to find the little girl I used to sneak out with at night to catch fireflies. But that version of her was long gone, buried somewhere beneath ambition, resentment, and a lifetime of competition I didn't even know we were in. And I realized I wasn't grieving just Dad anymore. I was grieving her too. Mason and the deputy had already contacted the authorities. The voice recording was more than enough to initiate an investigation. The forged documents sealed it. But I didn't tell Lana. Not right away. Instead, I waited. Let her enjoy her coffee. Let her take a walk down to the dock like she did every morning. Let her have those last few hours where she still believed she was the one in control. At 11:08 a.m., 2 unmarked vehicles pulled into the driveway. Lana was sitting on the porch swing, barefoot, book in hand. She looked up at the sound of tires crunching gravel, saw the badges, stood slowly. When they read her rights, she didn't scream, she didn't fight, she just looked at me. And for the first time since she arrived, I saw panic. She turned to me and whispered, "You don't have to do this." "I'm not," I said, voice steady. "You already did." They placed her in the back seat, hands cuffed gently in front of her. She didn't speak again. After they left, I stood alone on the porch, the wind rustling the pines, the lake perfectly still. The silence felt different now, not heavy, not haunted, just honest. A few days later, her lawyer tried to reach out. I ignored the calls. Then the emails came, first with questions, then apologies, then a letter. In it, Lana claimed she'd been desperate, unstable, influenced by people who told her I wouldn't notice, that she never intended to hurt me, that it got out of hand, that she was sorry. I didn't write back. I wasn't ready. Mom called when she found out. She'd been living in Florida, more distant in the last few years, ever since Dad's diagnosis. When I told her the truth, she cried. She said, "I always thought she was the strong one." I said nothing, because I didn't feel strong. I felt exhausted, like I'd just climbed out of a deep, dark pit and was finally seeing sunlight for the first time in months. Lana's case went to trial in late October. She pled guilty to attempted fraud and document forgery. The sedative in the soup? Harder to prove without direct evidence, but the circumstantial case was strong. Her sentence wasn't long, just under 2 years, but it was enough to make a statement, enough to make people ask questions, enough to make her sit with what she'd done. The cabin was quiet again, the kind of quiet that settles, not suffocates. I took long walks in the woods. I started writing again, not the memoir, but something new. Fiction, finally. Inspired by truth, but not bound by it. One day, while digging through old storage boxes, I found another letter from Dad. This one dated just weeks before he passed. Short, simple, written in the shaky, uneven scrawl I remembered from his final months. "Evelyn, I know you'll carry this family's weight longer than anyone else. Just promise me you'll also let go when it's time. You deserve peace too. Dad." I cried when I read it. The kind of crying that releases, not breaks. The kind that feels like coming home. A week later, I invited Mason over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just chili and cornbread. We sat on the porch afterward, watching the sunset bleed into the lake. "You okay?" he asked, quietly. "I think I am," I said. "I mean, I will be." He nodded. "You did the right thing, you know." "I didn't feel brave." "You didn't have to. You just had to be honest." There it was, the thing Lana never gave herself permission to be, honest. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. No dreams, no footsteps in the hall, just quiet. Real, earned quiet. And in the morning, I opened my windows wide, let the breeze in, and sat down to write the final line of the story I thought I'd never be able to finish. Not the one in my book, the one about me. Because family isn't defined by blood or legacy or who gets what when someone dies. It's defined by love, loyalty, and truth. And sometimes by the courage it takes to walk away from someone you once called sister and toward the people who truly choose you every single day.
And now I want to hear from you. What did the story stir in you? Did it remind you of someone? A moment? A choice you had to make? Drop your thoughts in the comments, whether it's a feeling, a question, or just one word. Your voice matters here. If the story moved you, if it made you think, or even just kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's more to come, new stories, new voices, new truths waiting to unfold. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. It means more than you know.